Hello everyone, Jerrel from Sungrand here. Today I wanted to share a little bit of the process behind the scenes working on Breath of Thunder, as you can see here. So right now we've got these um, trees that are just placeholders. So what I'm going to do is paint the texture here. Now with Breath of Thunder I want a very handcrafted, hand-painted look, something that looks like, it's painted by hand. The kind of thing that reminds me of the feeling that you get when you see a Legend of Mana game where it just gave a sense of magic and wonder, seeing all these things that were painted by hand. It gives a sense of inviting the viewer, the audience, to be part of the creative process and to fill in the blanks. And that is what is so important about true art that was created by a human, because it is created with intention, and real artists leave room for the viewer, the audience, to be part of that process. Uh, and it's something that takes an immense amount of consideration and planning. Um, some people just kind of stumble into being brilliant, but for the rest of us normal people, we have to put a significant amount of planning and work into that sort of process. So I kind of cheat a little bit. I use the smudge tool here, which is one of my absolute favorite tools when it comes to doing any digital painting in Photoshop. I think I've gone a little too harsh there. So with the smudge tool, what I'm now going to do is look for my harsh edges in there, and I'll zoom in a little bit just to give me, I zoom out when I want to work a little faster because you get more travel on that. I was actually supposed to, I need to do this actually. I need to select my guide. Let me Control A, nudge that, and I can select the layer here. So actually should say stay zoomed out a bit, as that would allow me to work a little faster, but I'll go for a little bit more precision here. I'm so accustomed to working at a very fast pace. Pretty much all of my games I've had to develop in such a short amount of time that I ended up just developing a sort of workflow where I just work very fast on this stuff here, and you sort of kind of like doing a speed run. You sort of optimized everything, and yeah, you try to enjoy the process as much as you can. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn that off. That's too much now. Go ahead and reduce the hardness on that. Turn down the size there. What's going on is I don't want the size of the brush to be influenced um, by the pressure that I'm applying. That will let me work a little bit faster. Okay, we'll shrink that down just a little bit more, and I think, all right, I think that'll get me what we want. Yeah, that'll get me that hand-painted look that I want. I might have to come through again with a larger sized brush and then do another layer of smudging here. So now I'm not getting exactly what I want here. No, I think I'm just going to turn that back on. It's too disorienting having that not enabled. So I like to do this smudging layer after I get my highlights in there, and you can see as they sort of blend out and they sort of blend in there. So I need to bring that right to the edges as well. So I will get that right to the edges, but you can see now as I get to the step, I can now blend the darks and the lights in together. And this step is, I get into a real flow when it comes to digital painting like this. This step I really enjoy, but I am recording, so I'm going to try and work just a little bit faster to share the process with you so that we can load it at least a little bit into the game, at least an early um, vision of it, and I can come back and work on this some more a little bit later as well. But you should never rush art when it comes to something like this. When it has meaning and you've got something to express, you should never really rush that. I know that I do. I mean, that's kind of rich advice coming from me, because I generally have to work so fast on my work. But you should try to at least make sure that you're enjoying the art that you're creating, or it's not going to turn out the way you want it. That's for certain. Right. You can see that I can blend in a little bit more now. So I tend to really like stylized games that don't necessarily aim to be overly cute, but just by proxy, by default being on the platform that they are, they can't help but be cute. And you can see the characters are trying so hard to be serious, and the story is quite serious. There is that sort of dichotomy of adorable seriousness that it's a charm that it's hard to replicate. You know, when those restrictions don't exist for you. I think it's the reason why Game Boy and Super Nintendo games have so much appeal. And it was something that I leaned into with my Game Boy Color game, Silver Falls Galaxy Bound Curse, which you can download and play for free. And that one has a very serious story. It's quite, it tends to be quite serious, but it looks adorable. And I leaned into that, because I knew that it was going to be sort of this really interesting juxtaposition of, well, the game looks cute, but the story is really serious, and that's part of the charm of those games. And, it was accidental back then. They didn't have a choice but to make the games adorable. Um, that's just how it turned out. That's the appeal. So I'm instead of just going for a second draft, because I'm recording this and I want to move kind of quickly here, I'm going to forego doing the second draft. I'm just going to go straight into my final vision for this here. So Breath of Thunder, I'm very excited for. This is my dream RPG, really, that I can put it on old consoles and I can share that dream with people all around the world. I want to make sure that I push my artistic expression. I want to push my art to its absolute limits. And when I find those limits, I want to go past them. I always want to do more with my art. I want to do the absolute most. And really the way to do that is just cultivate yourself, cultivate your soul, cultivate your spirit. And that is, that comes from your life experiences and how you respond to those life experiences. And that's is what makes art so interesting, is that it's the result of basically every decision we've ever made in our entire lives, our mistakes, our victories, our failures, and our faults, how we respond to those and how we grow. That is true art. That's what makes art what it is, and it's so interesting. When you see interesting art, you intrinsically understand the person that made this has to be an interesting person. They have to have lived an interesting life. Um, you can see I'm going straight to the edges here. I was going to go a little slower and go to the other side, and then do this step, but I'm going straight for it. I do want to make this game fairly quickly. Again, I have a number of games that I'm developing right now. There's two that are close to being finished in development, so I just want to make sure that I get this done. So I'm going to do a smudge layer, and after that I'll do a blending layer with some highlights and shadows, and just get looking really nice. All right. So you want to get rid of those thick brush lines that were there from earlier. And this has this really, this I don't know, it just has this visually flowing aesthetic to it, and I think it's so pleasant. So I've been making games for years now, for years and years and years. So when I see this in where I'm drawing it, I have an idea of what it's going to look like in engine, but you never really know. You can develop your sense for this. You have a sense of what it's going to look like at the end, but until it's in the engine, you really have no idea. And this is the stuff, that'll make the pre-renders look interesting. Instead of looking, just like, oh, it's a 3D game that was pre-rendered. This is what helps those pre-renders look interesting, that makes them look hand-drawn. So the way that my arm joint works, I'm going to struggle with the other side. So what I'm actually going to do is just rotate the canvas here. So I'm pretty happy with that. Just one more pass here. Just one more pass. Like this, one more pass, just like that. And again, I'm going to come through and put some shading and overlay blending over on that. But you know what? I'm not painting the 16th chapel here. I'm just doing a texture, which is going to take into account a whole lot of lighting data from the engine. So I don't need to go overboard here, But this is really, I think this is my first time seeing this, and I really think that's basically what I want in terms of the engine. So I'm going to rotate this whole thing now. Let's see. Actually, hold on. Oh, you know what I have to do? Actually, it's not rotating because it's going to be facing the other direction. What I need to do is flip it vertically. Okay, so I'm going to transform that vertically. There we go. Okay, yeah, and that'll allow me to use the shape of my joints. I know it's a strange thing to say, right? Like, that's one of your strengths, though, is that when you're an artist, when you paint or draw, you have certain strengths and when it comes to the way that your joints move, and so you have to use that strength to its fullest. If I were to sort of do the bottom edge like that, that'd be working against the way that my joints work, and it would make it very difficult. It would slow me down, and it would end up not looking the way that I want it to. So all right, so I think we've been going for a couple minutes now. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and stop the video here, and I will put the rest in part 2. So this has been part 1, and in part 2, I will be finished with this in part 2, and we will go ahead and put that in the engine, and we'll have a look. So again, before we wrap up, let's just go ahead and have a look. So our trees are these gray masses here. I had a placeholder in there before. I'll be replacing them with this hand-drawn texture. Okay, I'll be posting part 2 as a separate video following shortly.